Issue 44. We start out with Rotor showing to Sonic his new really large ray gun, and then saying to Sonic's disappointment that he's only going to use it in extreme situations. Why? Does he have really limited ammo? Really scarce ammo? How could lasers be scarce? Or does it just cause way too much collateral damage? When they usually don't operate near buildings anyways, they don't constantly worry about hurting civilians. And I thought Rotor said pun and not fun there, because the font looked weird and it just barely didn't look like a P. It's odd that I expected that since the comic is mostly ditch puns, as it should. An alarm happens telling Rotor with the monitor that something bad's happening on the floating island. And everyone gets into the plane to go there, with Antoine complaining that no one knows how to relax on their day off. Antoine, why would you ever expect anybody in the Freedom Fighters to get to have an actual day off? Also, considering the weird glasses he's wearing, I'm guessing he's the pilot. But Tails has shown that he can fly a plane too. The Sonic 3 adaptation, remember? So why is Tails being robbed of one of his only talents? It's bad enough that Bunny can fly too. It should be Tails flying this plane. Or at least Rotor. What, just because he's a kid? Antoine's a teen. We cut to Knuckles saying that the only reason there would be a quake on Angel Island is if someone's messing with the Chaos Chamber, which would cause the island to start falling. Scourge? So if it got here, that early in the comic before, and with Knuckles miles away instead of sitting in front of the Emerald like he fucking should be, then why the hell did it take so long for him to think to use the Emerald to turn green and stuff? He should have been able to do it right here. I'm assuming Knuckles was close to this place when the earthquake happened, because otherwise we'd have a situation where by the time Knuckles would be encountering the quake, you'd think the quake would have symbolized the Emerald having already been taken, and thus powering Scourge up or something. It'd be stupid if Scourge was standing here all this time doing nothing while an earthquake happened for no reason. I'm guessing this Emerald isn't as powerful as the Master Emerald, and so it can't power Scourge up to be his iconic form. Even though one Emerald has been stated to have infinite power, so it would be just as powerful as the Master Emerald, wouldn't it? What could be stronger than infinite? It looks like Scourge just warped to the Chaos Chamber. So why was there a quake beforehand anyways? Anyways, I'm glad to see Scourge again. For some reason, Knuckles' evil twin from Anti-Mobius is also here, even though he's not actually friends with Scourge. Which is a shame, because if Anti-Knuckles and Scourge were like best friends, that would have been an interesting contrast between Scourge and Sonic. Not to mention, it makes sense, since, especially in the early Archie Sonic comic, Sonic and Knuckles have very similar personalities, both being impatient, short-tempered, and prone to attacking first and asking questions later. The only difference is that Knuckles is more serious and negative. So why wouldn't Scourge and Anti-Knuckles be friends then? Only reason Sonic and Knuckles hate each other is because thanks to Eggman they got off on the wrong foot. And Archie Sonic has a harder time letting go of a grudge, I guess. Huh, so this version of Knuckles is Scottish, alright then. It's another dimension, so it makes sense that people's counterparts would have grown up in different cultures, or different countries. Or maybe the Scottish culture would be positioned in a different part of the world, so Anti-Mobius just happened to have a Scottish Angel Island. Maybe there, the Scottish immigrated to the place that would become the floating island and interbred with the Echidnas until they became Scottish too, or more likely the Echidnas were just Scottish all along. Maybe with their homeland being in Scotland. Who knows? Anti-Knuckles and Scourge go back to their portal without getting what they came for, because of two arbitrary bullshit things. One, their portal is starting to close because apparently the portal they created is a dick who put them on a time limit for shits and giggles. Why didn't Scourge just go by the Cosmic Interstate again? And two, I guess Anti-Knuckles and Scourge honestly thought that they couldn't overpower Knuckles by ganging up on him? Bullshit. Scourge has super speed, so we could just steal the Emerald at super speed while Anti-Knuckles was fighting with his twin. Worst case scenario, Scourge could have used his super speed to snap his neck. But obviously he didn't want to do that. Archimedes rushes to lecture Knuckles about having not stayed at the Emerald side the whole time, and when Knuckles points out the plot hole that New shouldn't be able to travel that fast, instead of justifying himself, Archimedes hand waves it as, "There are many things you still don't know about me, Knuckles." What, was he here all along and just couldn't be seen because he was so small and was hiding? So why didn't he come out of hiding and use his fire breath around Knuckles' enemies to be useful? Well, it could kill them, But he could miss just to scare them. He doesn't have to hit them. Sally shows up with Sonic and Tails and says that her satellite showed her that Knuckles was having some problems. How? Can satellites see earthquakes? Why doesn't Eggman just locate Knothole by satellite imaging to find those huts in the Great Forest? Well, okay, maybe the unwooded areas those huts are in are just too small. And satellite images are so far away from the world's surface that Eggman would have to zoom in a lot. And zooming in doesn't increase the resolution. So his images of the huts might just be too blurry for him to tell what they are. They'd still be yellow though. Sonic runs along the cosmic interstate. Why didn't Scourge go through that place? Instead, he had to rely on a portal that was on a time limit. Or maybe the portal was generated by just going through the interstate normally. Like that was the only way to get to Mobius. What? Knuckles says that Sonic doesn't know about his and Sally's history together and Sally's knowledge of the floating island because of it. And Sally says he's right? No, he does know. He learned that pretty clearly and wasn't happy about it. Is Sally lying to him? About time, if that's the case. She's too pure good most of the time. She tells him that she's protected his secret along with many others. We would travel to locations only Father knew of. I'm pretty sure with satellite imaging and cartographers mapping out the world, there is no location of Mobius that only the royal family would know of. It was only after I wandered off on my own that you revealed yourself to me. Okay, that's bullshit too. Knuckles is not the type to just sit and wait when he's got trespassers on his island. He'd be jumping out of the bushes and threatening her with the king the minute he'd see them. Why are they so special? Not waiting for them to cause trouble and steal his emerald. And apparently Sally couldn't speak of her friendship with Knuckles to anyone, lest she let her father know that he broke the rules of his apprenticeship. What rules? How? What is one of those rules you're not allowed to be friends with anyone? Or no friendship with an outsider? Wouldn't his friendship with the Chaotix break those rules too? So not only is his father someone who abandoned him, but he's a father who either horribly restricted his son's social life for no reason, not even overprotectiveness as far as we know, so that he'd be socially stunted, or a father who's racist against anyone who's not from Angel Island. So Sonic has been running along the cosmic interstate while Knuckles and the other freedom fighters were following him in a plane. I guess he was running slower to let them keep up. And at that point, the only point of him running at all is because he just likes running. Sure, it's convenient that they were able to find a portal to the cosmic interstate that easily. And they don't even question it. Scourge could have used his own leg generator, which would have generated the portal just fine. Now on anti-Mobius, Rotor has his remote scanner fly over the forest and transmit back to him whatever it'll see. Ha! I love it! Sonic actually says, "Don't you find it ironic that we depend so much on technology in our fight against a technological enemy?" See, this is the kind of self-awareness that's good. It works perfectly in universe, being a witty remark, and it's less bland than just saying, "Well, that's the way things always are around here. He beats you every time." I wasn't expecting the writer to actually lampshade this, and Rotor just says casually to fight fire with fire. I always liked that this was the case. It helps prevent the freedom fighters from appearing totally against technology by relying on an engineer on a regular basis, so he doesn't send the wrong message. Scourge and Anti-Knuckles jump out of the bushes for an ambush because I guess they returned home through the same portal as them and waited here expecting them to show up. That must have been boring for them. Did they have a talk together during that time? Wouldn't Scourge have been impatient? Sonic and Scourge don't really have a satisfying fight though, since they keep dodging each other's attacks with their super speed again, meaning them both having super speed cancels it out and removes the benefits of them both having it. Even if Scourge wanted to just grab Sonic and snap his neck at super speed, I guess he wouldn't be able to because he just missed that attack too. After Tails says he's bored of watching them fight each other too equally matched to make any progress, and Rotor says he's enjoying watching the different fighting styles because he's totally an expert on fighting styles, I wonder why the heroes aren't switching partners like last time and why Rotor and Tails aren't helping in the fight. Instead, Anti-Knuckles finally decides to give up, saying that he really hated himself if he killed Knuckles. So his evil twin really isn't that evil after all. This is how you write subversively and develop an evil twin's character instead of making him a cliche. Rather than just being evil Knuckles, he's Knuckles if he was Scottish. He says he never should have resorted to violence for any reason. Worst guardian ever. Even Knuckles lampshades this. Knuckles! So his evil twin is a pacifist. Who is the evil twin again? Not that I'm complaining, Knuckles isn't really pure good anyways. Anti-Knuckles, who I just noticed also has a mustache at his age, says that someone is draining the energy from the Chaos Emeralds that sustain his island. Not sure why he didn't immediately jump to the conclusion that it was Boomer. And I quote, "If we can't restore the energy, soon all will perish." First of all, we. So Scourge has convinced him that he cares about that happening and that's why they're working together. That, or he means we as in, I want all of you to help. That wouldn't be too ridiculous since by all will perish, that would include Scourge himself, wouldn't it? Why would Scourge want his own world to die if that would include himself? Maybe he's going behind Boomer's back. Second, there really shouldn't be a comma before the all there. And third, really? All will perish if Anti-Angel Island falls. I guess the rules are pretty different here. Apparently, if Anti-Angel Island falls from the sky, it explodes! It destroys the entire world in a nuclear explosion. I may sound like I'm complaining a lot, but really I'm having a field day with this issue. The problems just make reviewing it a lot more fun. I love Knuckles' response to this. That's not worth fighting for? You wimp! You're an embarrassment to echidnas everywhere! Because apparently echidnas and anti-Mobius are pacifists, and echidnas and Mobius are expected to be tough. But they need to guard an emerald. How do they expect to guard it then? With flowers and rainbows? Also, from what he's saying, there's still multiple Chaos Emeralds in Anti-Angel Island's Chaos Chamber. So there, the Dimitri event never happened, it destroyed the Chaos Emeralds. Maybe that's why the echidnas there are pacifists. But if the Dimitri event never happened, logically, since in the reverse world he'd have been a good guy, shouldn't the ultra-advanced Echidna Society still exist and be a major global power? I wish I got to see that. It sounds like a really interesting part of anti-Mobius. But wait, if Dimitri was the good guy, then his nice brother would have been the bad guy. So the same thing would have happened, wouldn't it have? Unless he didn't have a brother? When Knuckles says Anti-Knuckles is the guardian of his island, he says that he is. So I guess the Dimitri incident did happen. Either that or they were smart enough to have had guardians for the emeralds all along, which would have prevented the Dimitri event. But then Anti-Knuckles goes on to say that his island's actually submerged under the sea in an air containment field, which is running out of energy. Wow, this is a fascinating concept. It makes perfect sense. It was just as likely that Angel Island would have been chosen to fly as it was to have been chosen to sink. Both would have worked just fine. Maybe on anti-Mobius, Echidna Polis was on the island all along, until they were able to sink it to avoid the white meteor. Anyways, if that's all he means when he says that all will perish, he's been just as echidna-centered as that one echidna who said, "It's the end of the world!" at the prospect of just Echidna Polis being destroyed. It's not all, it's just Angel Island. But I guess Boomer found this place with a submarine then, to meet Anti-Knuckles in the first place. Or Boomer just used this, because it seems this Angel Island is open to any visitors. No immigration papers required. So how did the anti-freedom fighters even get to meet Anti-Knuckles in the first place? Anti-Knuckles would have no reason to leave his advanced city other than this one, so why would they even meet him? Is that why he's friends with Scourge? This is the first time he's ever met him? And Atlantinopolis. That's a much prettier name than that clunkier Echidnapolis, though it said Atlantopolis at first. So the city's name doesn't roll off the tongue as well as it could have. But I like that it implies, again, that not only are they less, arrogant, because they're not naming the entire city after the Echidna race, but it implies that Echidnapolis and all its advanced technology still exists on anti-Mobius instead of having been destroyed from a weird science vendetta. I would be so disappointed if that's not true, because that would be an amazing contrast between Mobius and anti-Mobius, in more ways than just morality is reversed. Sonic says that the air in Atlantinopolis is too thick, even though the whole problem is that the air is running out from the emeralds being drained. So wouldn't the problem be that the air is too thin because there's not enough of it? And Rotor says the air will get even thicker. This is so backwards. And look! Tall metal buildings! It's like Echidnapolis never went away! Wait a minute, Scourge is still here? Okay then, I guess the freedom fighters trust him to come along. You'd think they wouldn't want him in the plane. It's It's not explained that they just want to use him for his capabilities and are only letting him tag along reluctantly either. There's no character interaction here. Nicole's uses a Deus Ex Machina who magically knows exactly where they should go next, even though she shouldn't have any data on an entirely different world. Seriously, how the hell do her magic powers even work? Then it's revealed that it was Robotnik Prime, and not Boomer, who was draining the Emeralds' power. Makes perfect sense that Robotnik would do this. Maybe he thinks that this world will put up less resistance with no freedom fighters fighting him. But you'd think that Scourge, in his absolute misery at how boring and unchallenging his life is, would jump at the opportunity to fight Robotnik. Especially without his good twin there to gloat at how he's doing something heroic. So why did Scourge go try to steal an emerald from a different world instead of just drop-kicking Robotnik right then and there? Seriously though, I'm exhausted at this point. Do we really have to have the villain always be Eggman? This is another dimension! This is getting ridiculous at this point. This could have been a great opportunity to give Boomer the spot as the villain. Not to mention make an interesting character conflict where Scourge opposes his plan. Eggman brags that now, all of a sudden, he has the power to create interdimensional doorways whenever he wants without arousing the citizenry. First off, that's pretty overpowered. Second, I bet you this power isn't going to show up again, so that's just going to be dropped off. And third, arousing? I'm surprised that anyone can use that word in this day and age without meaning that. You'd think Eggman would just say, attracting the attention of, instead, to avoid the risk of being made fun of. And fourth, he might have made this machine the same way he made the so-called time machine that sent Sonic to Caveman Mobius, because if it was really the caveman times, Sonic wouldn't have run into exact duplicates of himself and his friends, and even Robotnik there. So it's less overpowered because it was just an interdimensional teleporter, not an actual time machine. Why would he care anyways? Isn't he an attention whore who would love attracting attention? Doesn't he want to get people to notice and fear him? How did he even find out about this world? Why did he even think to come here when he never met Scourge? There isn't any war, so they chalk up whatever disturbance I make to be a natural occurrence. So what? The echidnas are assuming that the emeralds are being drained because they're throwing a hissy fit? And draining themselves? Do they think evil spirits are doing it? Wish we got to see them say that. Scourge intrigues me, then immediately bores me by saying he did something evil and then saying like a cliched evil twin that he wishes he had thought of at first, exploiting his world. Even though he himself would have absolutely nothing to gain from doing what Eggman's doing. He'd have to use Boomer's technology to drain the energy into, and even then, if he drained the emeralds too much, the emerald would run out of air with him there and make him die of oxygen deprivation. Because yes, all will perish, including the person who caused the whole thing in the first place. Ugh. Gee, Scourge and Robotnik both, they really don't think things through, do they? What the hell? Why is Sonic just letting a SWAT-bot grab him? Why didn't he just run at Sonic speed the minute SWAT-bots came in and destroy all of them instead of standing there listening to Eggman like a dope? This is like a comic book version of cutscene incompetence. Some robots try to throw everyone into the water outside the city. Even Scourge gets threatened with it. He panics saying that this wasn't part of the plan. Also, ratted out means you're being snitched on, which he isn't. Oh thank god, finally he fights back. He awesomely punches out two SWAT-bots multiple times in a row at Sonic speed, and says the badass line, "This'll teach you not to mess with me." Yes! Sally orders Rotor to save Tails because he's the best swimmer. Naturally, since he's a walrus and has already been shown to be able to swim. Shouldn't Tails be able to swim just by flying underwater though, like in Sonic 3? I guess the writer wasn't aware he could do that, so he didn't know that. Knuckles, Sonic, Sally, and Inter-Knuckles are all not underwater, so it looks like Eggman just arbitrarily told a SWAT-bot to throw Tails out first. And not his most threatening enemy, Sonic the Hedgehog. Or Bunny. Where is she anyways? Sick again? That's what happens when you eat rotten Fruit Loops. Anyways, Scourge gets in trouble looking nervous for once because he revealed having a plan. Were they really that surprised? Why is he even scared? Why isn't he just carefreely shrugging it off? You'd think that someone arrogant would just be all like, "Yeah, I'm not afraid of you." Maybe he thinks they'll all gang up on him and tackle him, but he can move at super speed. He doesn't think he can take him? I guess he thinks that he'd be a coward if he ran away, and he'd have to run away because if he didn't, they'd all gang up on him and win. That's pretty smart of him to consider that they would win if they all ganged up on him. You'd think someone truly arrogant would just assume that he would win. He should just jump away from them though. At least try to be a badass and defend himself. Sadly, him being interrogated on this makes him miss out on a cool chance to fight Robotnik for the thrills and see how great it is. I like how Sonic lampshades his naivety. He didn't really know what he was dealing with, did he? Eggman tries to blast at Sonic and says a genuinely menacing line for once, that he's gonna make him wish he stayed roboticized when he's through with him. Archimedes shows up, I guess through a portal, explaining that Robotnik had opened up a gateway for him to the Prime Chaos Chamber. And naturally, Knuckles is startled at him showing up. And Anti-Knuckles isn't asking who he is, so clearly he has his own version of him. Archimedes tells the two Knuckles to follow his lead and avoid the particle beam, while Sally strategizes that Sonic and her will run in different directions to divert the attention away from Knuckles. The two Knuckles reposition the Chaos Emerald, and they make it deflect the beam at Eggman to once again send him to another dimension instead of killing him somehow, as the emeralds realistically split to pieces from having to absorb the blast. Why would Knuckles know that the laser was a teleporter if Sally didn't? What? Why do they have to place all the 6 emeralds in the proper positions? Why does it matter which position they're in? They're all the same, aren't they? They all have the same powers and look. How would he even know which emerald is which? Robotnik was going to destroy the Prime Knuckles' Chaos Emerald so that it couldn't be used against them, as opposed to, you know, trying to steal it to use it for himself. Well, he does live in a world with 50 billion Chaos Emeralds, so maybe he doesn't see the harm in wasting one. Meanwhile, Scourge is still tied up, even though almost being thrown into the water and drowned should have been punishment enough. And you know, I think it could have helped. It would have taught him a great lesson about how fun it is to fight bad guys. And it would have been especially useful to have 2 Sonics running around. So much for Sally being the brilliant tactician. So while he did basically save the day by destroying swap bots, other than that he wasn't really allowed to do anything. That sucks. So after Anti-Knuckles gets everyone back from Atlantis, Rotor complains that he had anticipated using the remote scanner everywhere except where he had needed it. That only reminds me that both of the inventions he had introduced end up being useless in this issue. He never used the giant ray gun that's for emergencies either. It better get used eventually because otherwise it getting introduced was just wasting comic space. Although it is nicer to actually subvert Chekhov's gun for once, and avoid making it played out and predictable by always using it. There's no backup story, by the way. This story was written by Ken Penders, and as a staple of his work, there are fascinating and brilliant concepts with flawed execution the actual story. Mostly the ending. While there were a lot of things that really bugged me logic-wise, like why Sonic didn't destroy all the swap bots the minute they showed up, forcing Scourge while people save the day, and reveal his plan by accident. In general, I love the story and I love the concepts. I loved getting to see Anti-Knuckles, because rather than being a bland, one-dimensional evil twin, he's actually a pacifist who thinks he'd never forgive himself for killing Knuckles. And he's Scottish for even more uniqueness, which didn't even have to be the case. And best of all, his Echidna society is not only in a cool underwater city, but it's still really advanced, as if the whole technology ban never happened there. Probably because they actually had guardians for the emeralds all along. It makes perfect sense that it turned out to be that way in another reality. The writer really put a lot of effort into Anti-Knuckles. I'm really impressed. I thought it'd be just like Knuckles. This is pretty brilliant. If only Scourge had that amount of effort put into him. Scourge basically being with the Freedom Fighters was a missed opportunity, because we never got to see him interact with anybody. He just wisely stayed silent the whole time to avoid getting yelled at, like he was shy. So once again, he's smarter than he looks. You'd think he'd want to pick a fight and argue with Sonic. We didn't get to see him having any real conversations with any of them. He was just there. But him getting to save the day was pretty awesome, and a nice change of pace. But by far, the biggest missed opportunity with the story was that it wasn't Boomer who was siphoning the emeralds. It wasn't even a new villain. It was just Robotnik again being shoved into a place where he didn't belong. Not to mention Scourge had been in cahoots with them, which was so boring and predictable. It would have been so much more interesting if Boomer was doing it and Scourge was genuinely opposed to him. That would have been a brilliant subversion and made him a deeper character. Villains can have standards too.